It was a busy afternoon at the airport. Travelers were rushing to their gates, flight announcements echoed over the speakers, and the usual hum of rolling luggage filled the terminal. Among the crowd, Steven Seagal walked casually dressed simply in a hoodie and sunglasses, blending into the airport chaos. He had flown countless times before, yet this particular day was about to take an unexpected turn. As he approached the first-class section, he handed over his boarding pass, expecting the smooth, effortless access he was used to. But the flight crew hesitated. One of the attendants looked at him oddly, scanning him with what seemed like suspicion. "Sir, you can't board first class today," she said firmly. Seagal blinked, taken aback not out of anger, but disbelief. "Excuse me?" he asked, calm but clearly confused. "I have a ticket for this seat." The attendant repeated herself, now slightly firmer. Something about the tone felt off a mix of bureaucracy, stubbornness, and subtle judgment. Other passengers nearby had begun to notice the unusual interaction. Phones were subtly raised, recording the scene, while whispers spread. "Wait, is that Steven Seagal?" Instead of raising his voice or demanding respect, Seagal simply tilted his head and smiled faintly. There was a quiet confidence in him, a calm awareness that whatever was about to happen, he wouldn't let it throw him off. His eyes scanned the cabin, noting the tension growing in the crew's faces. They expected frustration, maybe even confrontation, but all they got was quiet patience. In the background, the hum of the boarding process continued, but around Seagal, time seemed to slow. Each second added to the suspense. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, their curiosity piqued. Something was about to happen, and nobody could guess what. Then came the thought that would grip everyone emotionally. Here is one of the most legendary action stars in the world, refused first-class treatment by a flight attendant. How will he react? Will he explode, or will he handle it differently? The audience, at this point, is already hooked. They're mentally invested. They can feel the injustice, the tension, and the anticipation building. Seagal's calm demeanor draws them in even more because they know, in stories like these, the moment of true power doesn't come in anger, it comes in control. And control is exactly what Seagal is about to demonstrate. What Steven did next left everyone on that plane completely speechless, and it's something you won't believe. The flight crew still refused to let Steven Seagal into first class, and the situation was beginning to draw attention. Passengers nearby were shifting in their seats, glancing over with curiosity. Phones quietly emerged, pointed at the unfolding scene. Whispered questions floated around. Is that really Steven Seagal? Seagal didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate breath, letting his calm presence do most of the work. There was a quiet power in him, a sense that he could control this situation without aggression. His eyes met the lead flight attendant's gaze, unflinching, steady, and unafraid. "Sir, you cannot board first class," the attendant repeated, her tone sharp, as if she expected him to argue or lose his temper. But Seagal only smiled faintly, tilting his head. "I understand your position," he said evenly, "but I have a boarding pass for this seat. Can we discuss this calmly?" It was a small, simple request, but it carried weight. In that moment, passengers felt the contrast. Here was a man known worldwide for his action roles, someone who could intimidate or command, choosing patience instead. Around him, tension thickened. The whispers grew louder. Phones recorded every second, capturing the subtle power struggle. Some passengers began murmuring to each other, sharing their thoughts quietly. "He's staying calm. This is intense." The cabin atmosphere shifted. Normally, disagreements with flight attendants are quickly forgotten. But here, the drama was magnetic. Seagal's calm composure acted as a mental trap. Viewers watching the video at home would already start feeling the suspense. What will he do next? Will he explode, or will he completely dismantle this crew's authority with his mind, presence, and words? Then came the engagement moment, one that instantly pulls the audience in. Before the drama escalates, we want to know, where are you watching this from right now? City, country, type it in the comments below. Back on the plane, the crew tried to assert their authority again. Another attendant stepped forward, attempting to block him physically. But Seagal didn't back down. His posture was relaxed, yet commanding. His aura made the crew hesitate, even as they tried to maintain professionalism. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, some whispering encouragement. "Just wait. He's not going to take this lightly." Others were quietly recording, knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Every minute passed like a slow drumbeat, building anticipation. The tension was no longer just about first-class seating, it had become a subtle psychological showdown. Seagal wasn't just trying to board a plane. He was silently testing the crew's composure, challenging their assumptions, and commanding respect without aggression. For viewers, the mental trap deepened. They weren't just watching a celebrity being denied service. They were caught in a suspenseful scenario, emotionally invested in the outcome. Every gesture, every blink, every calm word from Seagal felt like a step closer to a payoff they had to see. By the end of this 30-minute standoff, it was clear. Something monumental was about to happen. The audience could feel it. The crew's confidence was slowly cracking, the passengers were tense, and the story had only just begun to escalate. And then, after 30 minutes of silence and tension, Steven Seagal made a move that completely shocked everyone on that plane, and nobody saw it coming. The tension inside the plane cabin had reached a level no passenger could ignore. Steven Seagal, known worldwide for his calm demeanor and legendary action roles, had been waiting patiently for over 30 minutes. His boarding pass clearly entitled him to a first-class seat, yet the flight crew refused to comply. Every passenger around him could feel it. This wasn't just a disagreement over seating. It was a battle of composure, patience, and silent authority. The lead attendant, growing frustrated, leaned slightly forward, voice firm but tight with annoyance. "Sir, you cannot board first class. Please cooperate." Seagal didn't flinch. He remained standing, posture relaxed, shoulders even, eyes steady. There was a calm intensity in the way he looked at her, the kind of energy that made people instinctively aware they were dealing with someone who wouldn't be intimidated. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, but it carried weight. Every passenger could feel it. Some murmured under their breath, "He's not angry, yet this is intense." Phones quietly filmed the encounter, capturing the subtle tension, the psychological battle unfolding. The air in the cabin was thick. The usual chatter of passengers was replaced by a silence, almost reverent. Everyone knew something extraordinary was happening. Seagal's family, who had accompanied him, could sense the energy shift. His calmness was reassuring, yet even they felt the undercurrent of frustration from the crew. His partner whispered nervously, "Steven, maybe we should just go back." But Seagal shook his head slightly, a quiet signal that he would not allow injustice to slide, no matter how minor it seemed. This was the mental trap for viewers. They were fully invested now. They weren't just watching a celebrity being denied first-class privileges. They were witnessing a masterclass in controlled confrontation. An emotional chess game played silently. The stakes felt enormous because everyone in the cabin was emotionally caught in it. Every gesture, every blink, every pause carried tension that kept viewers glued to the screen. The flight attendant tried to regain control. "If you do not comply, I may have to call security," she said, her voice firmer now. The threat hung in the air, heightening the suspense. Seagal tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk appearing on his face. He didn't respond aggressively. Instead, he remained composed, letting the words settle. The silence after her warning was deafening. Passengers shifted uneasily in their seats, some whispering, "He's going to do something, isn't he?" Then came the moment that drew the audience further in a direct engagement opportunity. Seagal's calm stance forced everyone watching, including online viewers, to ask themselves, what would you do in this situation? If you were on this plane witnessing this, what would you do right now? Comment your reaction. Would you stay calm like Steven, or confront the crew? Minutes passed like hours. The crew attempted subtle intimidation, blocking his path, speaking louder, gesturing toward other passengers as if to assert authority. But Seagal didn't move. He remained unshaken, his quiet confidence slowly turning the psychological pressure back onto the crew. Passengers were watching, holding their breath, caught in the energy of the standoff. Inside, Seagal was in control. Each second of patience increased the tension for both the crew and the audience. There was a silent message in every calm movement. Power doesn't always roar sometimes. It waits quietly, letting others reveal their weaknesses. As the minutes dragged on, the emotional stakes heightened. The crew's irritation was visible, their confidence faltering. The passengers were on edge, anticipating a breakthrough. The online audience, following the story or video, felt themselves trapped in this suspenseful moment. Every subtle gesture, every blink, every pause was a psychological hook, pulling them deeper into the story. By the end of part 3, viewers were fully immersed, mentally trapped, and emotionally invested. The narrative wasn't just about a seating dispute. It was about composure, strategy, and quiet authority all unfolding in real time, with real tension. And just when the crew thought they were in control, a small whisper from the passengers changed everything, and Steven Seagal was about to turn the tables completely. The cabin had reached a strange, almost electric stillness. Passengers were leaning forward in their seats, whispers spreading like wildfire. For over 30 minutes, Steven Seagal had stood calmly, refusing to escalate, his quiet composure making the crew visibly uncomfortable. The air seemed thick with anticipation, every subtle gesture magnified under the gaze of dozens of onlookers. Then, the whisper came. "Wait, isn't that Steven Seagal?" Heads turned. Phones were subtly repositioned to capture the man in the aisle. A few passengers nudged their neighbors, pointing discreetly. "That's him? The action star. The guy from all those movies." For the first time, the dynamic began to shift. The crew, who had previously assumed this was just another passenger refusing to comply, now felt a ripple of uncertainty. The lead attendant glanced around, catching snippets of hushed conversation from other passengers. Some were subtly filming, some were holding their breath. The murmurs weren't just about Seagal, they were about the strange, calm power he radiated in a situation most would have lost patience with long ago. Seagal noticed the whispers, but he remained unbothered. There was no smirk, no arrogance, only quiet confidence. He didn't announce himself, didn't demand special treatment, and didn't use his celebrity status to force compliance. Instead, he let the passengers' realization do the work. Recognition was spreading like wildfire, creating an invisible pressure on the crew. Every glance, every whispered acknowledgement amplified the tension. Passengers who recognized him felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Some whispered to their companions, "He's handling this calmly, unbelievable." Others filmed with their phones, zooming in, capturing every subtle movement. For the online audience, this was a psychological trap. They weren't just observing a man denied first-class privileges, they were mentally and emotionally caught in the suspense of what was about to unfold. Meanwhile, the crew tried to regain control. One attendant leaned slightly closer, voice firmer. "Sir, please step back. First class is not available to you." Seagal's calm remained unshaken. He didn't raise his voice or posture aggressively. Instead, he met her gaze with the subtle intensity of someone who could dominate a situation without lifting a hand. His presence alone created a tension the crew could feel. It was psychological, silent, and unstoppable. Passengers began sharing whispers again, this time more openly. "He's not just a celebrity. He's a master of control. Look how calm he is. This is insane." The murmurs spread to those who hadn't recognized him initially, pulling them into the story. Even those far back in the cabin could feel the atmosphere shift. The moment built suspense so tightly it was almost unbearable. Viewers watching online or through social media couldn't turn away. Every subtle glance, every tiny gesture of patience, every slight shift in Seagal's posture was a hook, mentally trapping them in the narrative. They felt the injustice, the suspense, and the anticipation, wondering what Seagal would do next, knowing it would likely be unforgettable. Seagal's family observed quietly, understanding that his calm wasn't weakness. This was strategy. Every second of patience increased the psychological pressure on the crew while keeping the audience completely engaged. The realization spread. This wasn't just about a denied first-class seat. This was about control, respect, and authority, and the power dynamic had begun to tip. The passengers had silently chosen a side admiration for Seagal, and an unspoken awareness that the crew had underestimated the situation entirely. And then, after 30 intense minutes of silence, Steven Seagal finally decided to speak, and what he said shook the entire cabin to its core. The cabin had become a stage. Every eye was on Steven Seagal. The whispers of recognition from Part 4 had amplified the tension, and now the passengers were holding their collective breath. For over 30 minutes, Seagal had maintained calm, standing silently as the flight attendants refused his rightful first-class seat. But the silence had reached its limit. It was time for action, not aggression, but a controlled, commanding presence that would flip the entire situation. Seagal inhaled slowly. His eyes scanned the lead attendant, who now seemed slightly unsure, and then the rest of the crew. He didn't raise his voice, but there was a subtle shift in the tone of his words. He spoke deliberately, measured, each syllable carrying authority. "Look," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here with a valid first-class ticket. I'm not asking for special treatment, I'm asking for fairness." A hush fell over the passengers. The murmurs died down, replaced by a tangible tension. Even those who hadn't recognized him could feel the weight of his presence. The crew's body language shifted, shoulders stiffened, and eyes darted nervously. Seagal continued, his tone steady, commanding. "I understand the rules, and I respect your role. But refusing a passenger without reason is not professionalism, it's not respect, and it's not necessary." The cabin felt the impact. Every subtle pause, every deliberate word created a mental trap for the crew. They had attempted to assert authority for over 30 minutes, but the calm intensity of Seagal's voice, the quiet power behind it, began to turn the tables. Passengers were captivated. Phones raised again, recording every moment, as if they were witnessing a masterclass in silent dominance and psychological control. The lead attendant tried to regain composure. "Sir, we are only enforcing the airline policy. Please." Seagal interrupted gently but firmly. "Policy is meant to serve people, not intimidate them, and right now, people are watching how this is handled. I don't need to raise my voice, I just need fairness." The room went still. Every passenger felt the weight of the words. Some leaned forward in their seats. Some whispered encouragement. Online viewers, watching clips or social media snippets, were mentally trapped in the narrative. They weren't just observing a dispute, they were experiencing the psychological chess game unfold, feeling the tension rise and anticipating the climax. Seagal's calm authority created a new reality in the cabin. The crew's attempts to assert control had been neutralized, not by shouting, not by anger, but by patience, presence, and precise words. He had flipped the power dynamic entirely. Now, they were reacting to him, not the other way around. Passengers began to murmur, some audibly. "Wow, he's handling this so calmly. That's insane." Others raised phones, capturing the moment that would soon go viral. Even Seagal's family recognized the shift. They exchanged glances, understanding that the subtle authority he wielded was far more powerful than confrontation or aggression ever could be. The turning point had been reached. The psychological pressure Seagal had built silently for over 30 minutes now bore fruit. The crew's confidence wavered. The passengers' attention and support solidified. This was no longer a dispute over a seat. This was about respect, control, and quiet power. He, audience mentally and emotionally trapped, sensed that the tables were about to turn completely. Every second, every word, every controlled pause led to the inevitable payoff. Hook for Part 6. And then, just when it seemed like the crew might regain control, Steven Seagal's next move completely humiliated them, and the entire cabin erupted in shock and awe. The cabin was tense. Every passenger was aware that something extraordinary was unfolding. For over 30 minutes, Steven Seagal had been calm, composed, and unwavering, while the flight crew refused to honor his first-class ticket. He had spoken with measured authority, exposing the lack of professionalism without raising his voice or threatening anyone. The passengers were caught in a mental trap, their anticipation reaching a peak. They could sense the turning point coming. Then it happened. A fellow crew member, approaching from the back, paused mid-step. Their eyes widened slightly as recognition hit. "Wait, sir, that's Steven Seagal," they muttered, almost under their breath. The words traveled quickly. A ripple ran through the passengers, whispers amplified into audible murmurs. "That's him, the action star, the martial arts legend." The lead attendant froze. Her previous confidence wavered. The authority she had wielded so firmly over the last 30 minutes suddenly seemed fragile. The crew's demeanor shifted instantly. Tension replaced boldness. They realized, in that moment, that the man they had been trying to intimidate was someone whose reputation commanded respect, not fear, but control and recognition. Seagal's calm, commanding presence didn't change, but the atmosphere in the cabin did. Every subtle gesture, every steady glance now carried amplified weight. He had not needed to shout, push, or assert aggression. The recognition alone had flipped the power dynamic entirely. Passengers began reacting openly, some leaning forward in awe, others discreetly cheering or nodding. Phones were raised, capturing the moment the crew's confidence crumbled. The psychological trap for viewers watching online was complete. They were no longer just witnessing a confrontation, they were part of the emotional experience, feeling suspense, awe, and vindication simultaneously. Seagal's family glanced at each other, impressed but unsurprised. They knew his calm authority always commanded attention, but seeing it play out in front of strangers in real time was still remarkable. The lead attendant, now flustered, attempted to regain composure. "Sir, we were following procedure." Seagal's voice remained steady, soft but piercing. "I understand procedure, but fairness and respect should always come first. Intimidation is not professionalism." At this moment, the cabin collectively exhaled. Passengers, previously tense, now felt a surge of satisfaction. The psychological payoff had arrived. They had witnessed injustice meet calm, controlled authority. They had felt the tension rise and now release in awe. Online viewers, whether watching a clip or reading the story, were mentally trapped in the drama. They experienced Seagal's quiet mastery of the situation, the humiliation of the crew, and the subtle victory of patience and composure. Comments poured in, people shared their amazement, their emotional reactions, and their reflections on authority, respect, and calm power. Even some passengers whispered to the crew, "You should have just let him sit. He handled this like a master." The embarrassment was real, palpable, and completely deserved. The crew had tried to assert control, but they underestimated not just the man's fame, but his presence, patience, and understanding of psychological influence. Seagal, however, didn't gloat. He didn't mock or humiliate unnecessarily. He remained composed, a living example of dignity in the face of confrontation. He allowed the moment to teach silently, showing everyone, passengers and crew alike, that respect is earned through presence and composure, not shouting or force. Have you ever seen someone completely turn a situation without aggression? Type yes or no in the comments and tell us your story. By the end of part 6, the situation had fully reversed. The crew's authority was dismantled, the passengers were in awe, and the audience, both in the cabin and online, had experienced a full cycle of tension, suspense, and psychological payoff. And the story didn't end there. The video went viral. Millions witnessed it, and Steven Seagal's calm domination became a global lesson in respect and control. The plane finally settled into silence after the tense confrontation. Steven Seagal remained seated in first class, calm, composed, and dignified, the very picture of control. Around him, passengers whispered, glanced at each other, and secretly admired the quiet authority he had displayed. For over 30 minutes, the crew had tried to assert dominance, to deny him what was rightfully his, but in the end, their efforts had collapsed under Seagal's patience, presence, and subtle psychological mastery. Phones were still recording, capturing every moment of the standoff. As the plane took off, the murmurs turned into animated discussion among passengers. They shared what had just unfolded with anyone willing to listen. The calm, precise way Seagal had handled the situation, the silent psychological power he wielded, and the embarrassment of the crew who had underestimated him. The story was already being retold in whispers, texts, and social media messages, spreading like wildfire even before the plane landed. Within hours, the clips reached the internet. Viewers worldwide were captivated. Millions watched a simple seating dispute transform into a masterclass in composure and respect. Comments poured in, admiration for Seagal's calm authority, astonishment at the crew's humiliation, and countless discussions about how patience and presence often outweigh aggression. Viewers were mentally and emotionally trapped in the tension, replaying the moment over and over, feeling the suspense, the drama, and the satisfaction of justice silently served. Even outside the viral videos, the incident became a topic of global conversation. Aviation forums, fan pages, and news outlets analyzed the subtle psychological power Seagal displayed. Many highlighted the lesson that true authority doesn't come from intimidation, it comes from composure, dignity, and strategic restraint. People across the globe debated how they might handle similar situations, mentally walking through every second of the encounter, and in doing so, they became emotionally invested in Seagal's method of handling injustice. Meanwhile, the flight crew faced internal scrutiny. Airline management reviewed the footage, understanding the embarrassment and the lack of professionalism displayed. The incident sparked discussions about training, customer service, and how even routine authority must be balanced with fairness and respect. Seagal's quiet victory was not just personal, it was a subtle lesson to the airline industry about dignity, patience, and the power of calm influence. Passengers on the plane, the online audience, and even casual viewers experienced the full emotional arc: frustration, tension, suspense, and finally, cathartic release. Seagal didn't need to yell, push, or assert force. He had demonstrated control through patience, intelligence, and presence. The lesson was clear: respect is earned, fairness is essential, and composure is a more powerful tool than aggression. If you believe no one should be underestimated or denied respect, type respect in the comments right now. Share this story with someone who needs to see the power of calm authority, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories that leave you speechless. As the world watched, the story of Steven Seagal refusing first class, enduring humiliation, and then completely shutting down the flight crew became more than a viral moment. It became a global lesson in patience, psychological mastery, and quiet dominance, a story people would remember, discuss, and replay for years to come.